yeah, that's a good idea. All right, I think. Well, we are recording. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of this thing we've been calling a Swapcast. Bang, bang. It's me, Brandon Smith, back again with my friend Kolton.
Hey.
What's up, Kolton? How you doing?
Good to see you again, man.
Yeah, you too. How you doing?
Doing well. You holding up there in the Great White North?
Oh, so far, apparently there's a protest today, but I found out about it last night and already had a bunch of plans. So, you know, and this is the thing too. I love that everyone's out protesting, but I can't be standing next to people who are asking permission. I just do things, you know. I'm not saying you shouldn't go protest, but they're all up there holding up signs like they're basically holding up signs that are like, you know, like we want Trump, like, you know, vote harder. I don't know, like Trump's the one who's doing this to us, guys. I don't understand, you know. I don't know. It's really weird how they get the divide. Let's go back to the
way it was just before the coronavirus, which is the most fucking insane thing. Like that's one thing to wish, just like for some normalcy in your life, but for things to go back to the way they were it's what got us here in the first place. So it'll just be a repeating cycle. I'm ready for people to start understanding that we have to break a cycle here to make something new, but. Man, I just saw some some reports of FBI raiding people that were organizing protests to do this kind of thing. I think it was in Utah, but I could be mistaken on that. I'll try to find the headline later. But yeah, man, I would not be organizing anything on Facebook or anything like that. Get Signal and use a real private encrypted messenger if you're gonna organize some shit like that. Because, man. Yeah, they're gonna start cracking down. The SA brown shirts are out. They're out and about, man. And it's what you have to do to enforce a crazy fucking narrative like what they've got going on right now. It doesn't make any sense to people who, if you paid attention in high school to anything in biology, there's a lot of holes you can immediately shoot in a lot of this, and it just makes it easy to absorb some of these arguments that keep getting censored too. And one of the reasons I keep talking about walking away from YouTube, but I guess I will when everybody else does, which is a shitty thing to say. But, other than that, all good up there?
Yeah, I'm holding up pretty well. Is your AC still on? I hear something in the background.
Oh, yeah. I apologize, people.
No, that's all right.
I'm coming at you from School Bus HQ podcast studio, and if I don't turn the AC on before the show, it gets really hot in here. So thank you all for bearing with us there. Crystal clear now, Brandon, huh?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sweet. Well, man, I wanted to kind of start with a story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because, you know, it's even for people who wouldn't call themselves truthers or don't spend time researching this kind of thing, it makes it really real when you know somebody that this happens to. Like when you hear somebody tell you firsthand that their child gets injured from a vaccine, like the first time you really hear that story, it hits it home because more than likely there's somebody around you and in your neighborhood that's like that. And with the coronavirus, I just experienced firsthand. I've got a very dear friend. I won't say her name or anything, but her father was actually, I won't even go into specifics, but anyway, her father died recently and had multiple heart attacks previously, you know, had a stroke before, was just in not good health. And so there were other circumstances, or those were the circumstances to his death. But of course, what do you find on the death certificate is that it was COVID, and it has nothing to do with COVID. And the poor girl and her family, like, this is a tragedy for them. And they're finding out that their loved one's death is becoming politicized for this fake statistical war that's going on, because it had nothing to do with COVID. But they so loosely set the boundaries on how you can diagnose it, and they even incentivize it in the hospitals. They pay doctors more if you've got a COVID death, like insurance is going to pay out more. Like, what the fuck is going on? Why you should not incentivize the systematic fuckery with statistics? Like that's what's confusing everybody. Fuckery, to not find a better word, but I think you understand my meaning there. But like just feeling the not only remorse just from the death, but now all this to come to grips with, like, that's such a shitty thing to happen. And I can't believe we're letting it happen. And I would love for that message to get out there, because that shit is really happening. And it'll be real when it happens to you or somebody you know, where it happens, because people are still dying, because people die every day. And the shitty thing is they're attributing a lot of those things to COVID falsely. But did y'all dive into any of that with the roundtable that you just did?
Yeah, we talked about that actually. Look at my shirt. Hang
I
on.
know you're going to Obi-Wan. You're like
It's because
you're
I put on a green, I put on a shirt, but then I just put on another light. So yeah, I'm gonna show off my sexy muscles now.
nice.
So they actually talked about the testing. They talked about all that stuff on the roundtable. It was pretty amazing because just the fact alone that the test, they say the people who make the test themselves say they can't really gauge the accuracy. There's no way to gauge the accuracy, but they estimate that it's up to 80% inaccurate. That's their estimate, up to 80% inaccurate. And so what they do is, just so you know, they take a piece of whatever from you, and they'll put it in this on this slide. This is the way it was explained to me, the PCR test, and they amplify it. And when they amplify it, what they actually do is double it. So if you have one of the strands of whatever they're looking for, you amplify it one time, it goes to 2. 2 times it goes to 4. 3 times it goes to 8, 16. And so I was told this, Dr. Thomas Cowan, his name is. He says if you go up to 60, everybody has it. You'll find this in everybody because they're just looking for this RNA strand, right? If you go up to 60, you know how many times they multiply this? 48 times. 48 times multiplied.
Wow.
And if you go to
Okay,
60, everyone will pretty much show up that they have it. So.
and I'm not a mathematical expert, but that sounds about right. Like 48 out of 60 is about 80%, right? So that would explain a whole lot of this. And especially when you find out coronaviruses are one of the most prominent strains and types of viruses around. So like I could imagine there's some confusion there too. But man, it gets scary because now you're seeing supply lines going bad, like food shortages on the horizon, people having to euthanize their animals, depopulate their herds. What the fuck is going on? So
it's crazy, man. It's totally. And the thing is, you can't even talk about it on Twitter, right? Wasn't that you that posted something that you're getting kicked off of Twitter for talking about food shortages?
No, it wasn't me, but I think I reposted somebody else. I don't use Twitter for that very same reason, but I've been making the mistake of going back to my Facebook, right? So I've got a Facebook profile. I never used it, haven't used it in years. So all of my friends on there are people that I met along the way when I was in college and in high school. So they have nothing to do with the internet persona that I have now in this thing all about truth. So me posting that kind of stuff was just so jarring, man. I got it was the internet version of torches and pitchforks coming after me, and it was a strange thing, but I just treated it like a data mining project to see how these ideas land and see where people's heads were at. And man, the mainstream narrative has done a number. I think there's this disease, this virus that's going around right now, where people hate Trump so bad that they let the mainstream media do their thinking for them, and let the little news headlines on Google and their phone and on Twitter and Facebook do their thinking for them, and it's not having the best effects right now. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing.
Yeah, I have seen it. It's crazy. And the other thing that I've seen are the bots. So it's weird because what's happening right now, there's people, it's polarizing so many people. Actually, I should probably bring myself to my own view, but it's polarizing so many people. And what's going on, I find, is that either people are sticking to what they know and they don't want to look at anything else. I had somebody on YouTube recently say to me that they did. I'm like, just watch the video, and they're like, I don't watch things on YouTube. I only watch the news or something like that. And I was just like, I don't know, man. It's just what are you afraid of? Because I watch the news and I'll watch the mainstream perspective also, and then I look at everything, and then I think whatever makes the most sense to me is what I and what I can verify. But then you get people that are waking up also, which is a great thing. I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, but the problem is now I find that they're waking up and they're freaking out because all this stuff is going on, and they realize, because once you realize one thing is crap and it's BS, then it's it just all starts to fall around you. It's like a house of cards. And so I think it's really starting to scare people. They're kind of getting scared. So I've been trying to tell people that, well, the first thing you got to remember is it's been this way for a long time. And the second thing you have to remember is that even though it seems that it's the worst, it always seems the worst before it gets the best. Think about the story of the turtle and the hare. And I always like to bring this up because I feel that the real reason that the turtle won is because he used his only advantage. And his only advantage would be to let the hare underestimate him. Let that rabbit get way far ahead of him, underestimate him, and then he could swoop by. And I think that's what is going on right now. I think I don't want to say like good and evil, but the nefarious forces that are out there, the ones that are trying to give us vaccines that have nanotechnology in them, those guys. Yeah. I think they're the ones that they think they have us right now. But you also got to think about how hard they have to try. They have to work so hard at it that I feel, I don't know, if it was easy to keep us all locked down, they wouldn't have to work so hard at it, So that gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah, and there is hope. If you look for hope out there, there's hope. And then if you look for reasons for no hope at all, you'll find those too. And that's the crazy thing. We've kind of, it's our technology outrunning our wisdom again, in that we've let the internet kind of turn into many different clicks and echo chambers, right? Where, most people, the way they search and the way they word their search, it beckons an echo chamber response from Google. It gives them the response they want to see. It's the first search there. They click it, they read it, skim it, confirm it, And yeah, it is good that people are waking up, and I'm finding the same thing, that when they're waking up, they're doing the flailing thing, and it disturbs a lot of people around them, and it pushes them further into the cave of where they're at, so they just recede further because they think their friends are going crazy, and they've been told that people are going crazy from all this. So if you're not careful, you trying to spread the truth might just push people deeper into that cave of darkness, and so really what you have to do is entreat them and like entice them to come out, ask questions, but being a shit poster, and having that like spite and sarcasm, that voice to you, it's not constructive for sure. It might feel good in the short term, but it's like that crack kind of feeling, But yeah, to your point earlier, yeah, you got to look at the mainstream narrative too, because it's important to understand what they want you to know, what they want to show you. But it's also important to find alternative sources. But it's when you jump onto a team, right, and you start thinking from the perspective of a team. And the reason I said the virus of people hating Trump so much is because there's been a group of people that have hated Trump, and now there's a lot more people that probably distrust him. And that distrust spurs them to jump on the team of the other people that don't like him, right? And so they just toe the party line. It's a new party of people that don't like Trump. And yeah, and I don't like the guy either, but that doesn't mean we throw out everything. You got to be able to separate ideas from people. And man, there's a lot more than a physical virus going on, man. The psychological operations are so deep, deep in this, and that's not something people want to hear. You're exactly right.
Yeah, no, people definitely don't want to hear that. But I've been trying lately though to just do my own thing and relax, because there's so much information, information overload just coming in. And since I've been working on these roundtables, it's been taking up a lot of my time. So I've been trying to focus more on that. So I remember you said something before we started that you had questions or whatever you want to talk about. You want to get into that?
Yeah. If you wouldn't mind, because I'm sure my listeners would love to just have a little overview. One part that I would really love for you to talk to me a little bit more about, maybe explain it, and you might be able to translate it, because that lady was very, very smart. You can tell she's done her research, and for a long time, she's one of these people that they tried to blow the whistle, and it didn't really work for her. So tell me a little bit about, let me try to remember, retroviruses causing cancer, and how that's possible, and how this lady kind of discovered it.
All right, so
and some background on the lady real quick.
All right, so mind. So Dr. Mikovits, you're talking about the first round table we did. We had Dr. Buttar and Dr. Mikovits on there, and so we're just trying to get just talk to anyone we can and get an idea of people out there, because some people, if you look deep enough into these people, I don't know. Like they might have an agenda. I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? Because like Dr. Buttar is like blowing up on YouTube, and why no one else is. You know what I mean? They're letting his message get out for some reason, but he's saying positive things, so I like it. But they did both say that they are not anti-vaccine. They're just anti the bullshit they're trying to give us. So who knows? Take it for what you will. But just so you know, Dr. Mikovits, she worked with, she basically did all the research around AIDS or in the early 80s.
Okay.
And so she worked in labs and stuff, and she's she got like a PhD. She was going to go get her medical doctor license, but she wanted to go work on HIV. And I guess she had also came up with something that cured one certain kind of cancer. So she was a mainstream legit doctor, and she was going around basically her whole time doing these things. And she ended up working at Fort Detrick, which is the bio lab that everyone's so infamous, right?
Yeah.
And she was working on gain of function studies. Like this was, I think, in the 90s, she said, or maybe early 2000s. So anyway,
and real quick,
go ahead.
Gain of function is such an important term right now that people should understand. What is gain of function exactly?
So gain of function is if you have, say you have this thing, it's called a virus or whatever you have, it's a cell. It only has a limited amount of functions. It has what God gave it or whatever, however God gave it. So what you're doing when you gain a function, you're trying to make it gain a function. So you're trying to give it an extra function. And for example, that could be making it so it sticks harder, like it's more virulent. There you go. More transmissible, so it'll just hang on. Imagine like putting hooks on it or something, so it sticks longer. And
you can slow down the latency too, so that it has a 2-week incubation period rather than 2 days, which is strange.
Yeah, these are all functions that you can add to it, and so that's the smoking gun. If you find an entity like this virus or whatever it is, and it has extra things added into it. And now there was this study that came out by these Indian doctors. I think it was in February. It was early on, and they said that this looks like it has gain of function. It had like HIV receptors or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff, apparently, Dr. Fauci has patents on. He holds patents for these things. So, I mean, they weren't able to prove it was the same thing, but this guy owns patents in the same kind of stuff. And then also, so what she discovered, though, was Dr. Mikovits discovered that in the blood supply is really all tainted in the vaccines, because they use these mouse cells. And they use mice to test everything because it's very similar to humans, and you could they could elicit a response from the mouse's immune system a lot easier than a human, obviously. And you could, these people are monsters. They don't care about people. Why would they care about mice? They just run through them, So what she found out was there was like some kind of mouse revenge going on, because there's these cells that go in with a vaccine. They go into us and they stay latent for a while, and then things can trigger them. All kinds of different things in your life can trigger them, and they can cause things such as cancer or other sicknesses or illnesses. And it's all because of this mouse virus that doesn't belong inside us, or these mouse cells that don't belong inside us. But I would say check out her book, and you could see all that stuff at on my website. If you go check out the video, and it's all at morelawsmoreproblems.com, and you go on the video tab right there, there's even a link to her book. And I read the foreword. It was written by RFK Jr. So that makes it even more like
in the link in the description for all Conspiracy Church Camp listeners.
Awesome,
man. Just two things real quick. This is just speculation too. I guess I don't have any proof for this, but you hear people talking about 5G being an aspect of this. Now, I don't think 5G is the cause of this, and this is a fake virus. But if what you're saying is true, and that there are things that lay dormant in your cells and wait for some kind of trigger, I wonder if a disruptive RF frequency through the air wouldn't be that kind of thing, because we know RF frequency does disturb DNA. It disturbs DNA molecules, disrupts the geometric structure of it even. And this is known. I just reposted a video the other day, this Australian scientist talking about the effects of RF radiation, an hour and a half long, and she's like a legit professor, PhD, talking right there about it. And what's so funny is it's not censored on YouTube. It's been up there for a good 2 years, and it's got a few million views. And it's a strange thing. But second thing, man, what's so strange? You start talking about mice. This is just like how synchronicities work. I'm gonna share my screen with you real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure, go ahead. You're good.
All right. So check this out. I found this by listening to, Joe Rogan to start. but through Joe Rogan's podcast, I heard about this guy, Brett Weinstein. You may have heard about him.
Yep, sounds familiar.
Yep. So Brett Weinstein, brother of Eric Weinstein, guy that does that Portal podcast, really good podcast. But anyway, so Brett early in his studies, he found that, all right, so the principle of this thing goes, and I'll put a link to this as well in here, but if you can see mice telomeres and its impact on back testing. So kind of just to give this a synopsis, what he found is that we test most of our drugs, most of our even vaccines like you're talking about, and most pharmaceuticals on lab rats, right? And as it turns out, pretty much all, like I think it's 98% of lab rats all come from this one place up in Maine, this one lab rat farm, right? And they've bred rats over time that have, because rats breed really fast and their genetics mutate and change really fast, and they breed out the ones that don't work as good lab rats to sell, right? So the market's going to determine their breeding. And so what the market of lab rats is actually determined is that lab rats with genetics that have altered their telomeres to be much longer than the telomeres of normal rats, right? So if you look in the cell of these rats that they produce and breed for lab testing, their telomeres are very long. And essentially what that means is that they have a better regeneration ability in the short term. So what they can do is get over inflammatory things, right? So they aren't as affected by all of the drugs that we're testing them on, essentially, right? We've essentially bred rats that have an immunity to most of these adjuvants and most of these toxic chemicals, right? So these rats that only live a short term, and in their first few weeks they get tested on, they have a higher tolerance to most of the shit we're putting in them, but they don't live very long, and they all get cancer. That's the craziest thing, is they all get cancer. So what this essentially means is that our test subjects for pretty much all drugs is flawed. It's a tainted, pretty much all of the medical information we know. And this is mainstream stuff. Like, this isn't conspiracy theory shit. This is real stuff that's going, if we looked at it and took it seriously, we should reconsider everything we know, like everything the medical industrial complex knows. But that's how you know they're not really out here for health. They're not really out here to help people. Is another one of their rackets. Because, and I'll stop sharing my screen here, and I'll post that link in the ship below. But man, like, if that's true, none of the data we have on any of the drugs we give to anybody is good, and it would explain why we have so many negative effects and why they have to have the super fast speak at the end of these pharma commercials where they tell you you'll probably want to drive your car off of a cliff, and and because of some like some bowel medicine, who I don't fucking get it, man. But it seems like everything they've got now works off of serotonin receptors, and serotonin is so key to your sanity. Well, I'll just say it like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think with everything that they do, and that's what they talked about, especially on the second round table, we had Dr. Kaufman and Dr. Tenpenny. And Dr. Tenpenny, Sherry Tenpenny, she's been outspoken advocate against vaccines. I mean, she bought the website Stop Mandatory Vaccines or something like that in like 2002. So she's been on top of she's been on top of this game for a while. And she writes a bunch of articles about all this stuff. She just wrote articles, it was a couple months ago, but it was about the DNA vaccines, and those things are really scary. So I would advise everybody to go check that out. Yeah, those.
Tell me a little bit about what you know about DNA vaccines, if you don't mind.
Actually, we didn't really get into DNA vaccines too much, but what I do know is that there is what they're saying so I was watching something last night with Spiro. I don't know if you know Spiro and The Last American Vagabond, Ryan from Last American Vagabond, and Whitney Webb.
Oh, you did.
Yeah. They did a video together, and I was watching it last night, and they were talking more about these DNA vaccines, and they said some of them actually they use nanobots in them because they won't work without the nanobots to come in. The adjuvants won't work how they're supposed to. So it's pretty crazy. And they also talk about she was showing videos of how they can control it from like a cell phone, all the nanobots that are inside you and stuff. So it's really interesting. I mean, look into it. But the thing that they were saying that I wanted to talk about was more about like the heavy metals in the sky and in the air. and they were testing their
Yeah.
rainwater and stuff. Because so Marcy Cravat, she was the one who was asking all the questions. She's a filmmaker and a documentarian. She's like won awards and stuff. She's great. And so she was asking them questions, and one of the questions was about these heavy metals. And she said, I tested my rainwater, and I had all these heavy metals that were inside me, and there's no industry near me. There shouldn't be heavy metals in the water, so it means it's coming from the sky. So they were saying how, there goes my light. Yikes. They were just saying how, I think it was Dr. Kaufman, or Kaufman. I always get his name wrong because I want to say Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman was saying how there are things like such as 5G, like you were saying with the radio waves, and they can interact with these heavy metals. It is possible. Like there's proof and stuff. There's so many things that are going on, but it really just has a lot to do with our environment. There's so many, and just in the water we drink, they put fluoride in the water. The air is terrible. There's gasoline. We're pumping gas into our cars all the time, breathing that crap in. So,
what I'm kind of putting together here? Did you ever hear? I think it was Max Egan, the Crow House.
Yep.
He was talking about these metal particulates being sprayed over Australia, and that contributing to why it was so flammable. Because it's like thermite. Like thermite is metal particles broken down at a really small level and mixed with other things, of course. But I'm wondering if that might have something to do with it. That's just speculation of people. That's just thinking.
Well, there's a ton of aluminum just in jet fuel itself, like the new jet fuel that they use. If you look at the makeup of it, there's aluminum in that. So well,
they started that in the 70s, from what I believe, from my research. They put it in jet fuel as a stabilizer, and I believe it's aluminum disulfate. They started putting in jet fuel, and so just at that, you don't have to have a chemtrail, but the exhaust of that jet fuel, like aluminum's not going to burn and be destroyed and go to something else. It's just going to be a very fine aerosolized aluminum particle in the sky. Yeah, that can't be good. They can't be good. We know aluminum in deodorant's not good for us. So we figured that out.
Exactly. Just figure if it's in the sky, how good it is for you.
And if you're breathing it, ooh, great.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the germ theory versus terrain theory? Because that's what they're also talking about in the second round table, and that's really interesting stuff.
Tell me a little bit about it, because I think I watched a video the other day that harped on it a little bit. But tell me a little bit about that part of the
I'll bring
round
myself to the stars. You'll know what you're talking about when you watch this, because I have a different view on mine. But so germ theory is basically what we believe now. Our medical industry believes that you can get somebody, like if you're sick, you get sick from someone else, and then you cough out all these germs and viruses, and they get other people sick. That's germ theory. Mm-hmm. Terrain theory says that it's something in your environment. It's a poison, it's a toxin in your environment that's causing you to be sick, and it's a reaction that you're having. Your body's having a reaction to something in your environment. And when they lock us down like this, the problem is we can't leave our environment to see if that's what it is, if that's what's something in our environment that's getting us sick. So in the way it was Dr. Thomas Cowan, look up his stuff, it's really good. He talks about how he said his story was, imagine I was a dolphin expert and I went to and then somebody called me because there's a bunch of dolphins and they were dying in Antarctica, and we had to figure it out. So I flew out there, but I was only able to use one method of diagnosis. They said to me, you can either check if all these dolphins I can't even talk. You can either check if all these dolphins have a virus, or you can check and see if there's a poison or a toxin in the water, or something toxic was spilled in the water. Which would you check for? Right? So you'd probably check for the toxin in the water, because we understand how that works with fish, but we just can't see how it works for ourselves. So they go on to say that, so then people would say, well, then how do you explain someone getting someone else sick? Because I see that, I've been at work and somebody was sick and they came in and I got sick. Well, this is still, like I said, it's still something they're working on. It's like a science, but they kind of believe that. And Marcy brought this up because she just did a documentary called Dirt Rich. It was about plants and everything and about farming. And they were saying how trees and different plants give off different, what do you call them, scents, or I guess they just throw things into they're like messages, pheromones. Like chemical messages, pheromones or whatever. Yeah. And the other plants in the area can get an idea what's going on. So in the same way, they believe that there's these little particles called exosomes that are inside us, and they look just like viruses. They're RNA strands. They're basically the same thing as a virus. And what happens is when you get a toxin near you, your cell will, it'll open up and let these exosomes out, and the exosomes will go and surround whatever the toxin is, and they also get into other cells and infect them. But it's what they're saying, it's more like a message. So what they think is, back in the day, like in the when they discovered bacteria, and then people were getting sick, and they discovered, well, they never really discovered viruses. They just they saw bacteria, but then people were getting sick and there wasn't bacteria. So they're like, all right, well, what can it be? So they just made up this thing, and they said it must be a virus. So they made up what it is. And years later, when they invented the electron microscope, they looked down, and lo and behold, what they see? They see strands of RNA, and they say, there's our virus. There it is. Right? And this was like in the, I think in the, like around the 1930s or whatever, 1920s, 30s, something like that. And then just about 30 years ago, somebody discovered the fact that there was exosomes. So now they know exosomes exist, and so they think they're just both. They just think that they're both existing, right? But whenever you see something where it shows the virus, it doesn't show exosomes too. They just say, "Oh, that's the virus," but there's really no way to tell the difference. So what they think is that everybody says this is a virus, but what's going on is there's some kind of toxin, some kind of pollutant. They don't know. Was it 5G? Is it them spraying all those toxins we just talked about? It could be all those things.
Jesus, man.
Just causing a little bit of sickness. And so what happens is I get sick, I get these flu-like symptoms, and these exosomes are released out of my body, and then you get them into your body, and it's like a message. So you start to get these flu-like symptoms too, because it's getting your immune system ready for the toxin that's in the area, but it's also a message. It's like an allergic reaction. Like if you got a rash because you're too close to poison ivy, you would know not to go near poison ivy anymore. Well, this is telling you there's a toxin in your environment, and you need to leave the environment. And it's letting other people around you know. And normally humans aren't so susceptible because we're so fat, because we eat garbage, we drink fluoride, our water's terrible.
And
the
who's
pH
at
is
risk?
They spray stuff, all that stuff. It puts everybody more at risk. When you get sick, it just lasts longer, And then adding to the fact that they're probably working on these things, whatever they are, viruses or exosomes, but they're making them more virulent. I can't say that. I got to look up that word. But they're just making, like you said, so it sticks around longer. So who knows if they're also letting chemical weapons go in certain areas, and that's what's also causing this. So that's what nobody really knows. But all 4 doctors that I talked to 2 on one round table and 2 on another, they all said not to wear a mask, to not wear like a cloth mask. It's just a waste. It actually... it's worse for your immune system because you're breathing in all your old CO2. You're not getting fresh oxygen, and then also because of that, your immune system starts to turn on because it thinks you're in trouble. You're getting less oxygen, so that's one of them.
Man, so they might actually be shocking our immune systems with a multi-pronged attack here. So one of them would be these masks. If this science is true, which it makes sense to me. I mean, if you're a carrier of this or any other kind of virus or whatnot, you're collecting it right there by your mouth and rebreathing it. You're not really giving your body a chance to expel it, which is, I'm sure, part of what breathing it out is about, is expelling some of that viral load from you. And yeah, so by keeping a mask on, man, you might do yourself more disservice, and especially by keeping people inside their houses, inside their dusty old houses with these old air filters that aren't HEPA filters, so they don't filter that kind of stuff out. They just recirculate any kind of viral load that's inside, and you're starving people of vitamin D. So when you get vitamin D, and I had a screen share to pull up here, but I think everybody just knows this by now, that vitamin D is good for you, and it's actually good for your immune system. It actually lowers your inflammation and lets your immune system get a chance to catch up. And that's not what they're doing to all of us. And when people are bored at home, they eat a lot because they're bored. And if you're just sitting around eating all day in your dank house with no sunshine, not doing anything, man, you talk about putting your body and your immune system under a lot of stress. Like, that's just not good for you. So all these guidelines and recommendations it could be that those are the very things that are getting everybody so sick. By the hypothesis you're running there, man, and that it makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what sucks, is it makes sense more than everything else they're telling us. That's how you know the lies are so deep too. But I'm not a scientist. I barely understand this shit. But
I'm not either, man. But I'll tell you one thing. I am a poker player, and I will sit down with anybody. I'll sit down with anyone in the world and play poker with them. I'm not saying I could beat them, but I'll just say I will, and I know when I'm being lied to, and that's the first thing. I knew I was being lied to, so it doesn't even matter that I talk to all these doctors. If you're somebody who hasn't talked to doctors and you don't want to wear a mask and you feel like you shouldn't, then you don't wear a mask. And when someone says something to you, all you have to do is tell them, listen, it's my right. Even if this, I talked about this with somebody I just had on my podcast, and she was talking about all this. Her name is Raphael and Nola Butterfly, and she talks about like weather modification and stuff, but she was also talking about all this corona stuff because she's been doing a lot of research. So she was saying, well, what, we were talking about the lockdown, and she's like, well, if it was as bad as like Ebola, we might have to lock down. And I was like, wait a minute, like, I got to stop you. No, I'm like, no matter how bad it is, you can't forcibly lock people up. They have to make their own decisions. That's what freedom's about. And she's like, oh yeah, I know, that makes sense. And then I understand if people don't feel that way, that's fine. But that's not what this country's about. You either have to move to another country, or I don't know what to tell you, or maybe start another another community somewhere else where you can do that stuff. But if you want to leave free people and still say you have a free country, you can't just lock somebody up, because safety is not the paramount thing. The paramount thing is freedom. People die. We die all the time. And that's what people should tell somebody. So if you're somebody who's listening to this and people are arguing the medical stuff, say, listen, we'll stop right there, because we're not doctors. But what I can tell you is I am a human and I have rights given to me. They call it alienable rights, inalienable, but really what it is inalienable. You cannot put a lien there, you cannot place a lien on these rights. So technically, rights just exist. Even if somebody throws you in a cage, you still have your rights. They're just trampling them, so nobody can take them away. So that's why when they say things like we got to take people's rights away, it's like you can't take them away. You can only throw them in jail or trample their rights. You can never like stop them or take them away.
And that's how you know it's not backed by anything but hot air, because they have to do all this fluff and enforce it in these crazy ways, because otherwise we would just get wise to it. But man, what's disturbing is even here in Mississippi, one of the college towns, Hattiesburg, Mississippi in particular, they are going to start enforcing you to wear masks in public. And if you don't wear a mask in public, it's finable. And in this society, at the end of every fine, doesn't matter if you disagree with it based on the merits of the Constitution, or just plain science, there's a gun at the end of that fine. And if you refuse to pay it or disagree, well, there's going to be a problem for you. And so they're quite literally going to have their cops be enforcing this. And this is in Mississippi, of all fucking places, which scares the shit out of me, because that's just one of these little things they're going to. That's them taking an inch and taking an inch, and it's just a gradual gnawing away at our fucking freedoms. And next it's going to be only 2 people in a car at a time, and then after that it's going to be restaurants can be open but only 10 occupants at a time or something. And like, restaurants can't survive on that. Like, you can't employ a staff by doing that. You're going to have to stay on the government teat to do that. And so man, I don't know if we're going to have an economic recovery for a while. And the biggest thing that concerns me is I don't like Trump, and especially, but at the same time, I think there's some things he does good, but I think a lot of the good things he does is out of spite. And I don't know if it's coming from the right place. But now it seems like this is just all about his re-election. So like, I don't know if that's the guy I'm putting my hopes and my faith in. I don't know if there's any kind of hope I can. Like, if I'm playing poker, I don't know if I'm betting my chips on that dude at all. It's not a good hand to have. But yeah, the people that would argue that we need to take some freedoms away to be able to deal with this so people don't die. I get your argument, but you also have to recognize that if you're making that argument, you're not coming from a place of having researched all of the government misdeeds that have been going on for the past century. If you do that research and you know how untrustable the authority is and how much more concentrated it is now, even since the 70s, and like the shit that's come out in the Freedom of Information Act is damning enough, and the trend hasn't been that it's gone away and got less corrupt. I mean, so the information's there. And just with that perspective, putting your blind trust in the WHO or the NHID, like Dr. Fauci was the guy that was around when the US gave $3.7 million to that Wuhan lab. Why are we trusting this guy? Why are we relying on this guy for the information?
Yeah, why are we relying on any of them for information? They are all that's what I say, because it's funny. You'll see people, because I've been watching videos of these rallies, which seeing people out there, and they're holding Trump signs, and it's like, why would you think that it's, Trump is the president? If he wanted to, he can end this all right now, and there's nothing they can do. They already tried to impeach him, and he was unimpeachable. So he's, in my opinion, he's just another head of this dragon, this multi-headed dragon or multi-headed serpent or whatever it is that, it's like Hydra. You cut off one head and another one comes. So him and Fauci, he even says it. If you watch the briefings, he's like, Fauci's my boy. I don't know why anyone was going to say fire Fauci. He's like, and then they asked him, well, why'd you retweet that tweet? He's like, I don't know. I retweet a lot of things. This is my buddy. And he had him get up there, and that they're friends. But not all the Trump supporters saw that, I bet. You know what I mean? But no. That's the reality. And I get it that some people just need, it's more comforting for them, I guess, to think that there is somebody that would come save them at the end of the day. But the problem is they don't realize that's exactly what's causing the problems. The fact that they need a hero is what is causing them to have one to come save the day. If you did the work on yourself and didn't, exactly, you're trying to take your personal responsibility and foist it onto somebody else, and which is something you can never do. Even if you think you're doing it, it looks like you're doing it, but you're not doing it, and that's why all these bad things are happening with natural law and all this stuff. We're having all these negative consequences, and the thing is, the people in power, everybody will say, well, it was the president's fault. He got us into war. But my thing is, at the end of the day, yeah, he might have been the one to say to go to war, but the people who went to war, and I say this as a Marine Corps veteran, all right, I take responsibility for the actions that I did, because I was I was a sober person, sound mind and body. I agreed to everything that I did, and I did it willingly. Not that I did anything too horrible, but what I'm saying is, so that's the kind of personal responsibility everybody has to get if they want the society that they talk about. If they really want a free society, even if you've done horrible, terrible things, there's nothing, you have to look at why you did those things and what led you to do that, and what was the thing that let you just kind of push it off to the side in your mind. And, did you tell yourself these people aren't real people, or whatever it is you had to do, or I'm fighting for freedom? Once you get to the bottom of those lies, you could become another person. You have to go inside. I mean, it's a definitely a hard journey, but that's the journey that everybody, that everyone needs to go on. If they, like I said, if we really want the society, a free society where we can all enjoy our freedom and not have to worry about people locking us up every couple months or whatever they want to do it. Think about it. Now that people know that they could do this to us. Now, okay, so even if you're somebody who thinks, all right, listen, this coronavirus is bad, all these politicians were right, okay, but think about this. I think they're all psychopaths, but if you don't think that, that's fine. But think about a psychopath who's now watching this happen and saying, wow, I need to get into power now because I could just shut everything down. Think about the next person who's going to get, if you're a Trump supporter, think about, if Hillary got elected, or if you're, it could always be worse.
Man, what I like to remind people of is that we had one of the largest apprehensions of our freedoms done under a Republican president. Same ticket as Trump, and that was in the midst of a crisis that freaked everybody out and got everybody up in arms and scared. And that was 9/11, and that was George Bush, And I've had these thoughts, and it's real similar to what I think about Q, is that if I think that the establishment knew there was a populist humanist movement on their hands, and that we were pretty fed up with the narrative. And I think that's why the Trump campaign harped on, oh, well, he doesn't talk like a politician. And, if they were really trying to run somebody, I know there's a lot smarter people in the establishment up there than to run Hillary with all of her background, So that one might have been staged, but if that one's up in the air, but Joe Biden running against Trump, that's how you know. If the establishment Democrats are going to put up Joe Biden as their candidate, that's how you know they're playing on the same side, because nobody in their right mind thinks that guy can beat Trump. I mean, that guy's going to fall asleep on the stage. That debate's going to be a slaughter. Yeah. If they go on stage, but luckily the coronavirus is here to keep them from going on stage and having a debate. So I don't know, man. I don't know, but yeah, I think Trump might be a LARP. I think he might be controlled opposition, something that's put in as this bastion of hope but everybody gets on that hope train and they divide the country into two and create two different echo chambers and control the narrative all the way to their end game, which we might be in right now, dude. It's man, that's a scary thought. It's a very scary thought.
Yeah, well, it is a scary thought, and I've thought that myself too. But there's other things that would lead me to believe that it's not totally the end game situation that we're looking at right now. But I don't know, man. I would just say live every day like it's your last day anyway, because that's how you should be living. But I think they're going to open us up, and it's just going to be one of those things where, like, after 9/11, we had the TSA and we had all this other BS. We have to take our shoes off, and it's, we're getting radiated. Now it's just going to be, I have a feeling it might be the vaccine thing or something like that. Now you have to have a vaccine, or now you have to wear a mask if you want to go anywhere. But the thing is, though, the people really have the power. All we have to do is say no. You don't even have to go to your state capital. I'm not telling you should or shouldn't. But what I'm saying is, if you just go about your daily life and you just stick together, there's nothing they can do. There's so many less of them. If everybody in your town got together and went down to town square or the center or whatever it is, like in Milford here, we have a Milford Center. If we all went down there and all the restaurants opened, and we all ate there, and then when the cops showed up, we just told them, "Sorry, guy, we're living our life. If we're breaking a crime, we'll call you if we need you. But everyone here is fine. No one's breaking a crime. We're all good." And if somebody's wearing a mask and they think this is real, then they could stay in their house, or they could go. That's what this is all about. You have the right to do whatever you want. If you want to stay in your house and believe what the news is telling you and believe what the government is telling you after they've been lying and lying and lying so many times, and even now, the numbers that are coming out, what they do is they have this one number they show everybody, and then they keep adjusting it in the background, and that's just to cover their ass. So later they could go, we thought it was going to be terrible, but no, they knew the whole time this wasn't going to be that bad. So go ahead.
Well, no, just what a beautiful time to start incrementally making your life anarchist, right? To start eliminating your masters. What a good time to start growing your own food. And you know what I heard the other day? This is a beautiful allegory. So the way a Ponzi scheme works, of course, is you constantly have to have inputs of new suckers buying into the thing for the middle management to make money and for the upper management to make money, right? You have to have suckers constantly coming in. And this is how the debt game works in America right now, especially right now in light of what's going on, when they can just print extra money at the top if they need it, if their Ponzi scheme stops working for them. So I've wondered what would happen. This is probably the most peaceful protest you could do if we just decided collectively that we were going to unplug from the big debt game. Like if you could organize at the community level for loans people needed, and people just simplified their lives a little bit. If we stopped putting in money to that Ponzi scheme, it would just come collapsing down, and that's one small thing you can do. And I mean, there's tons of them. You start growing some of your own food and you trade with your neighbors. Man, there's one less master you have, and you can spend less money at the grocery store, which is taxed. And every time you spend some money and it gets taxed, that's going to bomb brown children in another country. I mean, that's the radical personal responsibility that we should be feeling this as. It's like, that's how out of hand things have gone. Like, and just by you being a taxpayer, you're contributing to genocide, and you're contributing to these fucking crazy tariffs and sanctions that go on countries like Venezuela because their central bank doesn't want to play ball with the central banking cabal. There's no reason for us to put the sanctions and things we've done on Venezuela that's quite literally starved people. And by anybody's definition, that should be a genocide, but it's not. This should be genocidal behavior. And we fund that every time we pay taxes. So one of the most revolutionary things you can do is figure out how to need less money and make, you don't have to make less money, I guess, but figure out how to pay less taxes and don't skimp out on your taxes. Jesus said, "Give Caesar his due," and I think that was a good thing to say. Give them their due, but just try to unplug. And we can do that just by spending less, and needing less. And if we move to a culture and an economy of enough, then a lot of their Ponzi scheme comes crumbling down too. And that's why I love being a proponent of minimalism. It's why I love talking about living in a school bus and telling people about this kind of thing, because I mean, that's just one less bit of dollars that go to the man. You know what I mean? Property taxes not going to the man, not going to all the genocidal mania. So yeah, there's all these little things you can do. You can vote with your dollars. You can vote with your feet. If you're in a state that's fucking corrupt, like move. Move. Don't give them any more of your tax dollars. Get out of places like Liberty Lovers are flocking out of California left and right. Man, I used to work a job that was like telesales, right? I kind of ran the marketing department for a small solar company, but it really meant I was on the phone talking to people, and I heard a couple stories. So I'm gonna tell you one and then two that relates back to this roundtable. But just talking to people in New Orleans, especially, people were moving in flocks from California, and it was because of the way their governor was acting and the way their mayor and whatnot was acting, and all these crazy laws. Like, they didn't want to have their kids in the schools over there. So it is happening. People are voting with their feet and their dollars, but it takes us doing things like not shopping at Amazon or Walmart, choosing small businesses more. You don't have to unplug completely, but just imagine if you reduced your consumption by 50%, and if everybody did that at big box chains and you went to small business. Like, that's a revolution in and of itself, and it's a revolution that's real, because personal responsibility is the big thing there. And every other time in history we've had a revolution, it's been a violent one. And when you turn to violence like that, you become what you fight. And we saw that after World War II. We fought the Nazis, and what do we become? Systematically through Project Paperclip. You see it on the macro and in the micro in yourself. Like, you try to fight with one of your friends who thinks toxic or shitty or whatever, and you're going to become that if you try to fight with it. So we can't have a violent revolution again. If we do, we're just going to be right back into the same boat. It's just not how we break the cycle. It's just period not how we break the cycle. But what else is strange, and this is just on a weird woo-woo note, man, and just how crazy synchronicities get if you just pay attention in life. Like, when I was doing that job, I made a lot of phone calls, right? And I ended up talking to this one guy who's from Michigan, and he said back in 2001, he was working on a system that used UVA and UVB light therapy in blood to crack open different cells and destroy viruses and bacterias and cancers and whatnot. And I'm just on the phone trying to sell this guy solar panels, dude. And he's going off on me on this conspiracy, has no idea that I'm all into this shit. So seriously, like, I'm on the clock and I should be trying to make money, but I hear this guy out for a full hour and like 20 minutes on the phone in the middle of a work day. But man, and I didn't give it much credence because I looked it up and I couldn't find a whole lot. But then, like, because of what Trump said on the air the other day about this light therapy, which was totally misrepresented, like, that's one thing I got to give him credit for, is there really is true science about putting different kinds of UV light down in the body to reduce viruses. And I don't see why it wouldn't work on a respiratory infection. And there was science to it. Like, I think it was Cedars-Sinai even talked about it, one of these big mainstream research hospital medical facilities. So yeah, strange shit. But yeah, the synchronicities, when you start walking this kind of thing, those little weird things happen, and it becomes like you become like that person who's putting red strings together on a big post-it board.
Yeah, like Charlie in that meme, Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what happens when you start putting things together, because you realize that a lot of this is related. And I used to think there was all these separate conspiracies, but then I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot of it. It's just, at the end of the day, it's all related.
The monolithic and ruthless conspiracy, as the first crazy conspiracy theorist that had to get silenced said.
Yeah, exactly. What they say, none dare speak its name, or whatever, one of those. So I think what you said about self-defense or about nonviolent revolution was really amazing, because that's so true. We don't need to have a violent revolution. Like I said, we just need to do our own thing. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be prepared or that you shouldn't defend yourself, because I always say, do unto others, or do not do unto others that you don't want done, unless they start to infringe upon your rights. And then you have the right under natural law to use self-defense, which is the positive expression of force, which is the negative expression of force is violence. I know I say this all the time, but these are principles we need to know. We need to understand it back and forward, because if you're talking to somebody, anyone who's listening to this, if you're talking to somebody and you're trying to explain your point of view, if you can hit them with these things like rights and laws and all that stuff, I mean, they might not listen to you, but at least you're gonna sound like the rational, smart one, because you have a put together argument and you know what the heck you're talking about, and it makes sense. It's coherent. And I always tell people too, when you get into these, when you're talking to people, try to keep your calm. It's so easy to get upset, but that's really, at the end of the day, if you're not getting along with somebody, at the end of the day, if you're divided from somebody, that's what the people who are quote unquote in charge, like that's what they want. They want us to be hating each other no matter what it is. They don't care. They don't care if you hate them and then somebody else, doesn't, and then it's a thing. So that's why hate, you're right, it's so dangerous, it's so toxic. We have to try to empathize with these creatures, and like I said, even though until they come to your door, and then or whatever. I don't, maybe not until they come to your door, but obviously it's good to get together, it's good to rally. Like if I saw people getting together to rally and they were doing in Virginia and they all showed up armed, but they were like, hey, open up or whatever, I'd say, okay, then you have some, that's good. That's I mean, like I said, I hate to make it sound like I'm shitting on people who are going out to protest, but I'm not talking about everybody. There's certain people who are out there that say we want our freedom, that's great, but there's people out there that are like, just say we just need to get rid of this government, or they're just saying we just need, Donald Trump or a different person. And what they're really saying to me is, I just want to get back into my old cage. This new one is too small. Yeah. The other one's a little bigger. I could deal with it. Can I go back into my own cage? That's what I see. And I'm sorry anybody, take that offensive, but that's just what I fucking see. Because if you, I just heard this great analogy, and it was people who think all they have to do is take corruption out of politics. Like people who are like, we just got to get rid of the corruption. You're just like somebody who's watching pro wrestling and saying we need to get rid of the chairs. If we just get the chairs out of the ring, it'll be fine. It'll be even. But since you have those chairs in there, it's not even. And you're arguing with the ref about chairs at WWF. That's what you're doing when you're saying we need to get rid of our governor, or we need a new president. You're saying those chairs shouldn't be in there. That's not fair.
We need another Band-Aid on it ASAP.
Yeah, it's just a big show, everybody. We don't need these leaders. You know what? We need them now because of our behavior, because we're displaying behavior and we're allowing leaders. And if we don't allow it, and I know these are all really high concepts for people, but if you don't understand the true meaning of the word anarchy, check out my website. It's anarchy-means-without-rulers.com. Anarchy just means without archons, an archon. And an archon, this is from Latin, and all an archon is somebody who gets in the way. It's kind of where they got the word angel from, but it's somebody who stands in the way to power. They delegate the power to you, or they'll let you do it. They're like a filter in between you and the truth or whatever. So unless you want to have your own power, you can't have archons. So this isn't to say that anarchy, because everybody thinks it's just chaos, but I'm like, no, that's not what it means. Yeah, that's not what anarchy means. Chaos means chaos, and anarchy means anarchy. Look it up.
Yep, man. Shoot, there was another thing I wanted to.
Well, I could say something. If you could, think about, or I could talk about this while you think about it. Venezuela. Yeah. You mentioned Venezuela, and I think that's really important because a lot of people will say, "Well, they're socialists. They deserve what they get. They're the ones who are doing this. They're starving themselves." And I'd like to just point out, obviously, I'm a fucking anarchist, so I don't want socialism either, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously I'm not yelling at you, but when the United States goes against a country and they say they want to attack it, right? The people in that country are scared out of their mind and they flock to whatever tyrannical, insane leader that they have to try to save them because that's all they got, right? Because that is the guy, the crazy guy is the one who's saying the United States is trying to kill us. They're the evil ones. They're trying to starve us, Yeah. And when we do things like that, we're making him right. And so people will listen to him. They'll flock behind him. But if we left them alone and let them do their own thing, they could see on their own he's a terrible person, and then they could get rid of him. But right now they can't because there's too many interests. And if they get rid of him, they know that somebody worse is probably going to come in there. Mm-hmm. So that's how it works. So I understand people say, yeah, it's socialism and it's terrible. Yeah, it is. But why is it there? It's there because of the oppression of the quote-unquote capitalism, which capitalism, you're an ANCAP or whatever. Capitalism is a word that was made up by Karl Marx, all right? We got to start calling it what it is, a free market, okay? Free market. That's what we need, a free market. And all that free market means is that you do what you want with your you sell what you want to sell. I buy what I want to buy. There's no regulations. We do what we want. And then we just decide based on performance, so everybody has a rating or whatever, and then if this guy's fucking up, then we just don't go to his stuff anymore. And everyone's like, well, then how do you know if it's safe? Well, how many people die a year from prescription drugs and they're using it correctly? That's another thing they talked about in the roundtable. hundreds of thousands of people die every year from using their prescription drugs correctly. And that's after years of study by the FDA. And what really happens is any of these programs, that anytime you have a watchdog organization, they just get immediately corrupted because they're people, and those people have desires, and some of the desires are money. So what are so that
big pharma's got plenty of money.
Yeah, and they want more. That's why they want to vaccinate everybody. Like people can go, oh my God, it's that's the other thing too. You talk about all these conspiracies. People are like, well, I don't think they're that evil, and they don't really want to control the whole human race. Okay, fine, if you don't believe that, but what about money? Most people will do anything for a fucking $1 million or $2 million or $10 million. Think about the billions that are at stake if they can get this vaccination program on. If they could mandatorily vaccinate every human, you know how much money they're going to make off of that? Yeah. So even if you look at it from that way, and especially if it's not safe, they can't even prove it's safe. They say it's safe, but then you look at all the stuff they say behind closed doors or in meetings, and it's just like, maybe not.
Yeah. Man, and just talking about Venezuela and Libya, we do these regime change things. I think we did this with Cuba too. We replace a leader, we like assassinate a leader or something, or we denounce a leader. And if you denounce the leader, it emboldens the people who would support him, because the propaganda that's anti-American is there. But then when we do these regime change things, like we take out one, or we have a puppet election, or we fuck with the election, which we've definitely done to other countries. Like the CIA's got caught doing this to other countries, and that's completely antithetical to what we say we believe here in America about free choice and letting people choose. Like I don't know why, if we have a free society, we can't let other people choose. Because if you try to force something on somebody, just think back to your teen years when your parents tried to force something on you. The first thing you wanted to do was the opposite of that. And that's the thing. And this is for truth seekers too. If you think that you're going to change somebody by forcing that shit down their throat, now you're only going to push them further. And if you try to force your American version of democracy that's also got some strings attached, and financial strings especially, it's not free choice. We're not practicing what we preach at all. And for us to do a regime change like that is craziness. Yet another reason to distrust the very government that's been telling us all this. And what's crazy is the people who are all about these regime change wars are usually the freedom lovers. We love American freedom. It's the Republicans. It's the right side. But we love freedom up to not for anybody else.
Yeah, but and it's funny because the left doesn't. They used to stand up, but nobody stands up. No one stands up for anti-war anymore. No one cares. And that's the thing I say. If you think that Donald Trump is this Batman hero guy, I know you don't, but if you are one of these people who thinks, oh, he's just waiting, it's just the plan, trust the plan. Well, how is part of the plan, all these thousands of kids or hundreds of thousands dying in Yemen from starvation, from being targeted? They target schools, school buses. It's the Saudis that are doing it, but we directly support them. And you know where Donald Trump went? The minute he was elected, he went to Saudi Arabia to get one of those medals put on him by the guy who runs Saudi Arabia, right? So if you're somebody who is putting medals on somebody else, doesn't that mean you're above them? That means that you're above them, right? It's because somebody doesn't put a medal. If you're the highest one up, God is the only one who could grant you anything. You don't need medals. So what that's trying to tell them, and I'm not trying to say like Saudi Arabia is in control of our government. I mean, what I'm saying is that act is showing the people of Saudi Arabia, it's their king saying, look, he's my bitch. He does what I want. And the same thing. And then where'd he go next? Israel. He went right to Israel and hung out with Netanyahu or whatever. Got the same, had to kiss the ring, they call it. Same kind of thing. So, we have to understand. And my whole thing is I just believe there's people in all of these governments that are on the same side. And to them, it's all a big LARP. I like to call it a LARP, like what's going on now, because Mike Pompeo said we're in a live exercise, so I call it a live exercise role play.
It's like halfway between LARP and derp.
Yeah, exactly, LARPing, and it just sounds funny. No one knows what I'm talking about, so it's great because I always love that. LARPing, that song Grinding. I'm always like LARPing. Yeah, like that's what they're doing. When I see him on those press conferences, I just think of Pharrell in the background going LARPing. I'm like, they're doing it again. They're lying. But yeah, man, that's really how I feel it happens. And why wouldn't it? And I don't know. If you have a seat of power, you're going to end up with the worst people, the worst humans trying to get that seat of power. Anyone who's really good realizes that that's not the way to change things. And even if they do, eventually along the way, they're going to get corrupted. Donald Trump hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. They all did. Yeah. They all do it, man. Yeah, yeah. You know, and it's fine. It's what they have to do. It's what their soul or whatever has to go through. It's their karma. It's their life. That's part of their thing, and you can empathize with it. And if this is something that is giving you a lot of problem, I'd say go check out this guy named James True, and he's basically talking about how not all of them are evil, even though they are probably evil, but it's like a thought experiment kind of, where he's saying that some of them are doing this on purpose to wake people up. He goes, do you think they really needed to make all this stuff so sloppy? But he's also convinced that the towers were empty during 9/11. I don't know, because I saw the jumper, so I know. Yeah. But, you know, it's just, like I said, it's an all thought experiment. I just like his point of view, because even if he's wrong, he's still feeling empathy for them. And you could feel empathy for anybody. That's the key, because when you hate, you're going to turn just like Luke Skywalker, right? At the end, he's like, strike me down, and you'll be like your father, right? But the reason he didn't, because he had empathy for his father, and he was doing it out of empathy. You know what I'm saying? And it was a self-defense act. If you watch Star Wars very closely, he didn't kill him. He didn't kill the Emperor. He tried to take a swipe at him, but he didn't kill him until the Emperor was already about to kill his father. So it was an act of self-defense. It was empathy that led him there, and that's why he was the only true Jedi, in my opinion, because all the other Jedis, even in the prequels, they were all blind to what was going on right under their damn nose, right? And then all the other ones switched to the dark side. So they're either blind to what's going on or switch to the dark side. And I think Luke, the only reason Luke was the pure one was because he did his own thing. He had Obi-Wan get him started, and then he was on his own. Then he went to Yoda for a little while, and he went into that cave, and he faced himself, right? And it was part of the journey. And then what happened? His friends needed his help. And what happened? His master, Master Yoda, said, don't leave. And what did he say? He said, fuck you, Master Yoda. I'm doing my own thing, all right? And he never went evil, okay? Yeah. The shit in the newer movies, fuck that. But what I'm saying is, like, if you take that, that's such a strong message. You got to rely on yourself. And that's why he never went evil. And he wore black, which was great, because him wearing black like that was letting people know that he's in touch with his dark side, man, and he's not as afraid of it. Because the problem is, when you're afraid of your dark side and you try to repress it and push it down, you become the dark side. You become that, because in your head,
you become what you fight.
You become what you fight, because in your head, and as above, so below. So if you're fighting internally, you're going to become that also, because you keep telling yourself, I'm never going to be like that. I would never be a Nazi. That's what these people who are snitching on, they probably always used to say, I'd never be a Nazi. That's never me. How could that ever happen? Well, that's how it can happen, because I remember saying to myself one day, I could murder somebody if I had to. You know, like that song, How I Could Just Kill a Man by Cypress Hill. I'm like, yeah, I bet I could if I had to, you know, and I'm thinking to myself. And then I do thought experiments. Sometimes it's a good thing to do. Sit there and alone and say, if I was in Nazi Germany, you know, and then you think about all the things that are happening, you're like, I could see myself in a circumstance where that could happen, you know?
Yeah.
Especially if you look at the true history and what really happened with Zionism, and they took what the Zionists did and blamed all the Jews, and they try to demonize them, which is terrible what they did, but we still don't know the truth. Most people, I mean, it's out there, but most people don't know. Most people don't know the people who are running Israel are the very Zionists who used to run the concentration camps, because and they backed Hitler. It was a split, man. Like, look into this if you don't know it. This is something I learned pretty recently too, and I was shocked.
Well, and they funded both sides. It's just like that Lord of War movie with Nicolas Cage. Like, they funded the Bolsheviks. This is known that all Bolshevik movements were funded by these big Zionist money, and but then at the same time, you know, Germany was propagandizing all of them as it, you know, just like Zionism was propagandizing all Germans and Slavs as like this lesser than human race of people. It was happening on both sides. But of course, you know, when two shitty people get into a street fight and only one of them wins, you know, you only get one side of the story. And so even though both of them were probably shitheads, which the US, Britain, Germany, Russia, all of them, terrible things. And you know, if Germany would have won, the Nuremberg trials would have been reversed, and Britain would be answering for the fire bombings at Dresden, you know, murdering a 250,000 people overnight in a designated safe city. You know, that was the first war crime in World War II. So yeah, the victors definitely write the history books. But you know what you were saying, I love the incorporation of the shadow. Was that Jung? Is that Carl Jung that talked about that, or was that Nietzsche? One of them.
Both of them kind of talk about it really in their own way or another, yeah. But Jung like
also
yeah, he did. Yep. That's where I got the analogy of the Nazi thing. I learned that from him, even though he's probably very likely a shill. But that's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
You could take a teaching from anybody. It doesn't matter, and that's what I try to tell people. They're like, I don't know, I don't trust this person. It doesn't matter if you trust them. Listen to what they're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're a shill, part of what they're gonna say is true because that's the allure. It's the bait that gets you out
Mm-hmm.
there, and the lie is the hook that'll fucking get you in it. You're like a fish because you're believing that
Yeah.
lie. But I think I cut you off. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, but just it kind of synchronizing with what you were saying a minute ago, we're collectively in this part of the hero's journey where we're in the darkest part of it. You know, like this is Frodo fighting off the goddamn spider in the cave up there. You know, like we're in that darkest part, and the only hero's journeys we get to read about and see about in movies are the ones where the hero makes it out onto the other side, which might be good for the collective consciousness if that's the thing we can all envision. But we also, I think, what's totally possible is the hero's journey where people don't deal with themselves in the cave. They don't do what Luke Skywalker did and face themselves in there. They don't do the inner work and sit down and realize what degree of responsibility they have to this. Like, I'm a millennial. I haven't even been voting age that long, but there's still some amount of responsibility I take for all this, and because we definitely all should. And then with responsibility beckons the action. But we're at that part of the hero's journey in the darkest part of the cave, right before you fight the dragon. But on the other side of the dragon, if you're willing to face yourself, face down your inner demons, which that's usually what the dragon is, the gold is on the other side. And it's not going to be a bunch of physical gold, but metaphysical gold, like the kind of gold, like alchemy, like the alchemy of your soul, hardening it and well, maybe not hardening it, but strengthening it. I think is the best way to say that. But yeah, we all collectively have a decision. We collectively do, and then each individual, I guess, has the decision on what they do when they're in the darkest part of this. And man, I think I want to go Luke Skywalker on this one, man.
Yeah, that it's the way to go, and I think what you said was great. The only other thing I was going to add to that, and then we could probably just wrap this up, was the really hardest part of that movie was when Frodo decided he wanted to keep the ring for himself, and I think that's such an important message for everybody because Frodo was the purest one in the whole place, and he couldn't even hold the ring for that long. He could hold it longer than anyone else in the realm, but even at that point, man, it doesn't matter. That ring of power has to be destroyed. It's gotta be destroyed. And the fact that Samwise was there to save the day, and, they together they couldn't have done it. That's the thing, and I also think that kind of represents two sides of the mind, like getting him to work in conjunction and that stuff. But and also the friendship thing, like you have to rely on other people because. Especially when it comes to things with power, it's hard to just rely on yourself. You can't trust yourself sometimes when it comes to that. Yeah. So, yeah, man. Anything else you wanted to add to this before we end it?
Man, no. I'm in a much better place at the end of this conversation, dude. That was an uplifting bit. I like this one a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I really liked it too, and I'm glad that you hit me up. I was gonna hit you up anyway because I figured it was about time. I can always feel it, like it feels like in the air. It's like it's about time to hit up Kolton again and do another, do another one of these things. Another one of these podcasts. All right, that's awesome, man. Well, where can people find you? Let them know here. So on my podcast.
Yeah, by the time this podcast comes out, I should have the whole backlog of all my episodes on YouTube. But if you want to find me on YouTube, you're gonna have to look for M Kolton Ultra, M.Kolton with a K Ultra, like MK Ultra. So it's the topic conversation starter right there with the name. If you share the name, so you get to tell people about something that's provable with Freedom of Information Act, MK Ultra, which is something that should raise hairs on the backs of necks and red flags in people's heads. So I think that's the main reason I chose that name. And it's a fun one. But in that YouTube channel, I'm going to be putting all the podcasts up there. Of course, you can listen to these, but I don't feel like the podcasts are done justice without having a thorough examination and exhibition of all of the different solutions that I practice on a day-to-day basis, the ones I've got just right now, and the ones that I'm experimenting with day-to-day. So I want to use that YouTube channel to take you guys with me on these experiments, between my little anarchy garden over here, things like intermittent fasting, taking you guys along that, different diet things for something like this. Like, man, Brandon, I can't tell you how important intermittent fasting's been to me, just like staying healthy, keep my immune system good, and conserving food. Like I'm practicing for the case of a time where I'll have to ration too. And you'll learn to eat on one meal a day, man. I did it for a whole week and felt really good. I was super hungry at the end of it, but it was a good gut cleanse. But yeah, I want to do those kind of things, man. I want to put some more exhibition to like living in a school bus, man, because I haven't capitalized on that at all. And it's not like I want to capitalize on it, but I want to be able to show people like how easy this is and like the benefits of it. And then if I get into a sailboat anytime soon, that'll all be there. But if you just want to listen to the audio on the podcast too, it's also on Spotify and Apple, Conspiracy Church Camp. And I'm also on Instagram, Conspiracy Church Camp as well. What about you? Where they
Awesome.
can find you, Brandon?
You can find me at morelawsmoreproblems.com. The website, if you're watching this video on my channel, it's right under there. Make sure you please like and subscribe to anything. If you're watching this on Kolton, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're watching it on mine, like and subscribe. Share it around. This is how we get the message out there. The one thing I really did want to add quickly is I've been doing the same thing. I stopped eating meat at the end of last year. And all these things I've been doing in my life, I've been like, the past couple of years, I've been like more solitude. But it's just because I've been getting to know myself. I still go out once in a while and hang out with my friends. But I've already started to prepare myself instinctually for this life. And, you know, sometimes I only eat once a day. You know, I was hanging out with my parents the other day. And they worked and and there was about came dinner time, but it was like an hour after, and they were starving. And I said to them, like, you know, I haven't even eaten all day, and I'm not even hungry. Like, I just, but I ate. When I ate, I felt hungry then. But it's, and then at night, I gotta admit, I'm not perfect. Everyone at night, it's rough. You know, the Ben and Jerry's sometimes it calls. You know, I gotta.
Me too.
But no, we all. That's why it's you just can't be too hard on yourself. That's the secret to any kind of self work. The minute you do something, if you try to meditate and you can only meditate for 3 minutes, just say to yourself, that's great, 3 minutes. Tomorrow we'll do 4, you know? That's how it works. But anyway, yeah, check me out, morelawsmoreproblems.com. I have a bunch of content going up. You can check out the videos, the memes, the podcasts. I also do a podcast called The Terrible Podcast with my friend and I, Ashley, talk about tarot cards, and you can find that at tarotboll.com, TAROTBOLL. It's a lot of fun. We don't really talk too much conspiracy. I get in there a little bit, but it's more mainstream. So if you have some friends that might be into tarot, and they're not really conspiracy minded or they're on the edge, send them that, because I throw in hints, and my co-host Ashley always reels me back. She won't let me go too far, which I told her to do because I don't want it to sound crazy, you know. Yeah, but I always so it's another way to reach us. And until next time, thanks a lot, Kolton, and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, brother, good talking, man. See you next time.
Later.
Bye.